So today we're going to talk about how to hire A players part two. I recently did a video that talked about how to hire A players and the importance of culture, right? So what we talked about, just as a quick summary, is that money isn't going to get you A players. Money is just the threshold, right? If money is the only thing that's holding your A player there, then as soon as someone offers them more money, they're gone. All right. So the thing that holds A players, that attracts them and holds them, is your culture, right? What are you trying to accomplish? And I'm going to equate, when I say culture, I'm going to equate that to your mission or your vision, right? What are you trying to accomplish? So our firm wanted to be recognized as one of the top firms in Northern California in our specialty, right? And so we did lots of things to move us in that direction. That was our culture. So when people would join our firm, even though I couldn't pay them the same as even the public defender, what I could offer them is that we are working to be the best criminal defense firm in Northern California, and we want you to help us do that. And in exchange, we will help you become a better lawyer, right? Those two things both have to move together. And that was enticing for top candidates, because the good candidates want to get better. If they're there just for the money, then quite frankly, that would not fit into our culture. But if they're there because they buy into the vision, they understand what we're doing. All right. So the question is, where do you find these people? Okay. And I'm going to suggest a couple things. One, the first thing you've got to figure out is, what's your definition of an A player? So are you trying to bring in the smartest and brightest out of law school and you want to teach them from square one? And so you're looking for somebody with, certain skills, but, they haven't practiced, so you don't really know how they're going to perform, right? It's like, when you draft a quarterback, sometimes the best, the highest draft quarterbacks wind up being a bust because it's different. The NFL is different than college. Well, law school is different than practicing law. And so just because someone was a great student doesn't mean that they'll do well in your firm or that you even want them. So the first thing you got to kind of identify is, do you want someone brand new? And then if you want someone brand new, what skill sets are you going to look at? Because they don't have a record that you're going to be able to use. Or do you want someone kind of mid-range, someone who's been practicing for a while, but it has shown a lot of promise, and you think that they're the diamond in the rough, that you can get them to where they want to go? Or are you looking for the established A player, somebody who's been practicing maybe 10 years, who's done, in the criminal defense world, I would say they've been practicing for 10 years or 15 years, and they've got 50 or so jury trials under their belt, and they have a good reputation, and they're, they know their way around the courtroom, probably been a public defender or a district attorney. Is that what you want? Okay. So I think that's the first level that you've got to decide. And each one of those people are going to have price points. So, you have your beginner, I would say 0 to 2 years. You have your intermediate, probably I would say 5 to 7. And then you have your established. And they're, probably 10 to 15 years, right? Now, I understand that there's gaps between those, but that doesn't mean that you have to fill them in, right? If you want someone who's established, this is what you want to aim at, right? Don't aim at, why say, well, I'll take somebody who's only been practicing for 7 years. I mean, unless they're an absolute superstar, you want somebody who's been there, done that, and come out the other side, and that that they'll survive. 7 years at the public defender's office was often the breaking point for many, many lawyers. A lot of lawyers, at least in our office, left at right at 7 years. They would leave at 1 year because they realized this really isn't for me. And they'd leave at 7 years because 7 years is when burnout kind of takes over. So you want to make sure that they're past that, okay, if you're going for the established. Now, each one of these obviously has a salary, right? So, you're going to get someone straight out of law school for a lot cheaper than you're going to get an intermediate, and you're going to pay, just like in a menu in a restaurant, right? You're going to pay the most for someone established, but there's reasons why you do that. So the first thing that you got to decide is what do you want? All right. Again, what we're doing is we're looking for the A players. So what is it that you want? What fills the need that you have? So if there was a period of time when we were doing DUIs, where this is where we would start. We'd always start with a brand new lawyer, and we teach them how to do the DUIs that we wanted, because I could teach that pretty easily. I didn't want to do it, and it made good money. It was, a profitable aspect of our practice. After COVID, when, we basically gave up on our DUI practice. So after that, we were always looking for, at very least, intermediate people. We didn't have the cases to train brand new people. We needed people who had some experience. And when I was getting ready to sell the firm and leaving, I needed someone who was like me, who was established, who had been around a long time, and could do the work that I did. Okay, so that's what you got to be asking yourself: is what are they doing? Are they going to be taking over the work that you're doing? Or are they going to be doing something different? It doesn't matter what the practice area is, right? Where do they fit in this? And each of these are going to be thresholds, right? What I would say is don't shortchange yourself, and get someone who's only been practicing for a few years. If what you truly need is someone who's established. All right, now where do you find these people? All right, well, the established people work for somebody. It is incredibly rare for an A-player lawyer, a top-notch lawyer, to not either own a firm or be working for somebody. All right. So where do you find those guys? Well, you're going to, and gals, these people. If you're a criminal defense firm or a criminal defense attorney, you're going to see them in court. You're going to know, if you're spending any time in court at all, you're going to know who the top guns are. You can watch them in action. You can see them do their thing. That's where you're going to find them. And then, what I always recommend is just ask them, hey, let me go out and buy you a cup of coffee. I want to talk to you about something. Would you have any interest at all working in my firm? And that's how, that was exactly the question that I asked Martin Jones when we began the process of him buying my firm. I met him, I saw him in a parking lot, and I asked him, I said, Martin, would you have any interest at all in buying my firm? And he said yes, and then we, set up appointments and whatever, and worked it out and made a decision that that's what we're going to do. That's the way you got to go with an A player, an established person. You got to go recruit them. You got to go after them. You've got to, because you may wind up offering them less money. That's a possibility if they're, depending on where they are. But what else can you give them? Well, you can give them your culture, or you may be able to reduce their workload, or you may give them the ability to do something different that they've been unable to do in the position that they're in. Intermediate, where are you going to find those folks? Well, I say the same place. I think that you need to see them in action. Now, if you're if you're doing civil work, PI work, it may be a whole lot harder to find these folks, right? Because you're not in court in the same way that family law is, immigration, criminal defense. Those kinds of practices tend to be in court, tend to be exposed to other people, especially with all the remote stuff. It is harder, but that's where you're going to find these folks. Because again, if they're A players, they're top-notch people who are just haven't been practicing that long. They have a job. People like that aren't unemployed. So yeah, you can put an ad out on Craigslist and LinkedIn and Indeed and all of those. And I'm not discouraging. I think that you should. You absolutely should, because you never know what you're going to get. And we've gotten some great employees that way. But the place to really be looking is in the courtroom. Now, brand new folks, you might as well. The difference between 0 and 2 years is pretty minimal, I think. More likely than not, they've learned some basic stuff, but they've also learned bad habits. So these folks you find in law school, and those folks you find with internships and those kinds of things. So that's where I would be looking for them. But the key, what I say, how to hire A players is you always have to be recruiting, and you always have to keep your eyes open, because the top-notch players, the 5 or 6 top people in your region, in your practice area, aren't going to be available for very long, if they're available at all. And if they do become available for whatever reason, or they get open to the idea of looking at other options, then you got to be able to be ready to jump on that. So especially if you're talking about established people, you need to keep your eyes open all the time. All right, everybody, I hope this is helpful.